World of Warcraft is coming to console. It's no longer just a theory, we now have a report. And also in that report, it also talks about something that I said Xbox was going to do. So we're batting 1,000 over here. Hello, everybody. It's your boy Jmulls. Let's talk console.
Times change.
Earlier today, Windows Central put out an article by Jez Corden detailing what the next generation of Xbox hardware is going to look like. Do you know the Steam Deck? Okay, so it's kind of like that. Let's be a bit more specific. So the idea for the next generation of Xbox console is that it has a regular Xbox user interface. Something very much along the lines of what they have for the Xbox Asus ROG Ally. Think of that like a beta test for the next generation of Xbox. That will be your standard user experience for Xbox. However, like you can on the Xbox Asus ROG Ally, you can swap it to a desktop mode, which is just regular Windows. Think of it also, again, very similar to how a Steam Deck operates, where you have the Steam OS interface designed to basically feel very smooth and natural for the control scheme of the Steam Deck, but you can then select to go into a desktop mode, which just loads up a Linux desktop. And the way you'll be able to play World of Warcraft on the next generation of console for Xbox is by going to the desktop mode and basically treating it like a PC and just downloading Battle.net and then playing WoW from there. Bob's your uncle. Some people will question whether or not it's actually a console anymore. I've been talking about Xbox possibly going in this direction for a while now, or something like this, and just embracing Windows. I mean, it's the same company at the end of the day. It makes no sense as a company to compete with yourself when you can just consolidate resources, since Xbox is Microsoft and Windows is Microsoft. This also goes back to one of the things we've talked about on the channel before, that consoles over the last couple of generations, but especially with this generation, have really moved to becoming PCs with more limitations, and basically just glorified PCs overall. And again, it's seemingly going in that direction and continuing in the direction of just consoles becoming PCs. So what does this mean for World of Warcraft? Well, it will almost certainly be available to an even wider audience now. And while I imagine you would be able to just play WoW on the new Xbox with mouse and keyboard, it wouldn't surprise me if Blizzard tries to bake in controller functionality into World of Warcraft itself. Something akin to like what Final Fantasy XIV does, where you can play either mouse and keyboard or with just a regular controller, and the user interface will adjust and augment itself to suit whatever control scheme you're using at the current time. Because you got to imagine, even if you can play it with mouse and keyboard on the new Xbox, it's still a console for a lot of people. A lot of them are going to want to play the game with a controller. And sure, you can download something like an add-on to do that for you, but come on, makes a heck of a lot more sense to me if Blizzard modifies the game to be more controller friendly, or just add in a whole bunch of regular native controller support. That wouldn't surprise me if they do that over the course of midnight, probably in one of the patches. But now here's where things get really interesting to me. What about the state of add-ons?
Times change.
Well, if this report is accurate, so always a disclaimer there, it's possibly not, but assuming this is accurate and this is what the next generation of Xbox looks like, it's basically a glorified PC, to the point where it's just a PC. And unless there's some weird limitations, you would have to imagine that with the desktop mode, you would just be able to download something like CurseForge and just use add-ons for World of Warcraft, or just download add-ons yourself and modify the game files like that. Because again, it's basically a PC. So why this whole war on add-ons? For those who may not know, for Midnight, they're really reining in the ability for add-ons to, as they put it, automate combat decisions for the player. You'll still be able to customize the game overall with them, it's just the days of add-ons basically telling you what to do and taking in-game logic and spitting out what to do, or modifying combat like that is just gonna go the way of the dodo. But if World of Warcraft is coming to console because this next Xbox that's coming out as a console is basically just a PC, well then why do that? The belief for a lot of people was that they are doing this because it's coming to console and they won't be able to really have easy add-on support there. Well, I think for a couple of reasons. One, for the overall health and state of the game overall, but I also wonder if the internal logic is, will players trying to play WoW on the next Xbox really want to mess with any of that? You want as little friction and as little barriers to entry to get into your game as humanly possible, because people can drop off with the slightest amount of friction. So they probably view, hey, having to boot up Windows mode itself, download Battle.net, and then downloading the game probably is already a bit too much. Let's just make sure people don't feel compelled to download a bunch of add-ons because that is the perception surrounding WoW right now. Which to me is also the reason they'll probably add native controller support for World of Warcraft and make sure the game is fully playable and is an enjoyable experience with a controller going forward. So it's a case of like shooting down a few birds with one stone when it comes to why Midnight's doing a bunch of these giant seismic changes to the overall game state. It's not just a matter of the game coming to console, even if that next console is basically just a PC. It's giving the game a basically soft refresh and a good excuse to rein things in that for a lot of people have just gone simply too far.
Times change.
So what does this mean for World of Warcraft moving forward? Honestly, I'm not entirely sure how much this will actually move the needle for people. I'm sure some people will play it on the next generation Xbox, but there's so many other variables at play in terms of how many people actually end up buying the thing. What's the price point of the console itself? And will the audience of people that want to get that next generation Xbox also want to play World of Warcraft? It's entirely possible that the amount of people realistically playing on Xbox is actually rather low in comparison to the established player base in PC, and I wouldn't be surprised if that ends up being the case, where the vast majority, the lion's share of the player base continues to be on PC proper. Now, when can we actually expect this to come to pass? Jez Corden says in the article, the quote, "The landing strip I've seen for next-gen Xbox hardware has always pointed to 2027. And if it's late 2027, that could possibly line up with the release of the expansion after Midnight the Last Titan, which would be the final expansion in the World Soul Saga for World of Warcraft. So like maybe that's when they would actually incorporate full controller support, or they do it in like the pre-patch. It's like, it's possible. Again, nothing's confirmed and this is just a report that'll be in the description down below, but at the same time, this does track with pretty much just common sense as to what Xbox and Microsoft would do for the next generation, especially since the Xbox Asus ROG Ally is kind of just this in a handheld. At the end of the day, Xbox is going to do what Microsoft tells them to do. And for World of Warcraft, they're trying to play the long game. This has been one of the things they've really hopped in on during interviews, not just throughout the War Within, but also over the course of talking about Midnight. They are focusing on the long game, and I think a lot of design and a lot of the things we've seen out of World of Warcraft really does point to them thinking not just in the short-term perspective that a lot of previous expansions really felt like, but them trying to lay the foundation and groundwork for a lot of things they want to continue to build off of in the future. And I think doing pretty much a reset of the gameplay formula for World of Warcraft when it comes to Midnight, with things like reining in add-ons, with very much simplifying a lot of classes and specializations. It basically gives them a new foundation that they can start building off of for the future, because WoW is a game that has gone on for so long, right? It's like, it's a game that came out in 2004. We're 21 years on in this thing. Like, yeah, given as crazy as that sounds, it's one of the issues any game that goes on for so long is going to run into. At some point, do you just break under the weight of everything that has come before you, and you just become so impenetrable for someone that is new trying to come into the game? All the while, you may have older players just like aging out of World of Warcraft, or something happens in their life and they can no longer just don't want to play the game anymore, and over time you just start bleeding players and you never recoup anyone because the game isn't in a state where it's at all new player friendly. I think it's one of the biggest concerns WoW has right now. They want to address that. And even if the market isn't necessarily the largest thing ever, being able to tap into the console market or even the Xbox market, which, let's be fair here, has seen better days compared to right now, it is still a new market nonetheless. And combine that with trying to shorten perceived barriers of entry into the game and the ecosystem for a lot of people, with things like simplifying overall class design, reining in the perceived importance of add-ons as well. It's basically a way for World of Warcraft to hit a soft reset for the overall game state, and then go from there with this new vision, not necessarily being beholden to a bunch of old game design baggage that they have from previous expansions. As I've said before, it'll all depend on the execution. Is the game still fun? Is the game still enjoyable? Do people still want to put a bunch of time into the game and be a part of this world? Are the changes they are making to the new player experience introducing people into World of Warcraft effectively? If not, how can we fix that? How can we remedy that? And at the same time, you cannot fall into the proverbial pitfall where you focus solely on trying to accrue a new audience and you leave your existing audience and your die-hard fan base out to dry. Now, I don't necessarily think WoW is doing that right now, but it is something to consider. You can't only focus on trying to accrue new players, you have to focus on the players you already have, which is something they funnily enough have talked about in interviews before, where Dragonflight was meant to fix the game for existing players right now, and now they can start to make modifications to the game to fix and address the new player situation. Time will tell.
Times change.
There's another element to all of this that I think is important to address, and that is what happens with Game Pass. One of the biggest pieces of speculation for a while now was that whether or not Microsoft would actually put World of Warcraft onto Game Pass, whether that be the PC Game Pass or if it ever came to Xbox as a console, just regular Game Pass. Well, it does seem as if Game Pass and the purpose of Game Pass is kind of changing with Xbox's new direction. According to the article, right now, I'm told the current plan is for the next Xbox specifically to have no paywall for multiplayer. It wouldn't make a lick of sense for a PC to have paid multiplayer, particularly since it would create a strong incentive for players to simply install Steam instead of use the Xbox ecosystem on that device for online games. It remains to be seen if that plan actually plays out into reality though. I don't think it's entirely off the table, but I kind of really doubt we'll ever see World of Warcraft sub go on to like Game Pass itself, unless the monetization model of WoW drastically changes and they start to just prefer the money they get from higher editions of expansions and also from stuff from the online store. That's entirely possible. I mean, look at how freaking much that dinosaur sold. And it was $90! I digress. If their main priority becomes, hey, we just want people in this game being invested in World of Warcraft because we'll get enough people that will spend inordinate amounts of money on the online store to recoup any lost, money we would get from all those people being on the sub, we'll have to wait and see. You gotta imagine if WoW does go to the Game Pass sub that they would lose some money from subscriptions one way or the other. Like I said, it is possible they view it as a bit of a lost leader and just want people in the ecosystem to buy stuff from the online store and they make a bunch of money like that. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't even know what they want to do yet. Or if they have an idea, it's just not set in stone right now. At the same time, it's a company, things can change from one year to the next. And if, again, according to the article, we're not expecting the next piece of Xbox kit to come until 2027, and who knows when in 2027 that could be, that's still a long ways out. A bunch of things could change from now to then. I personally wouldn't put my theoretical money on WoW going into the Game Pass subscription. It wouldn't necessarily surprise me if it did happen. I feel kind of 50-50 about it. It's not like Game Pass doesn't already have some functionality with Battle.net. I mean, if you have Game Pass, you'll have access to certain games on Battle.net so long as you, connect those accounts. Just again, we have to wait and see.
Times change.
You know, people always ask me, totally, if it's hard being right all the time, and to them I say, to quote my favorite TV detective, it's a gift and a curse. Okay, putting that aside for a second, World of Warcraft is experiencing a bunch of changes, not just in the near future, but also likely for years to come as well. I think it's a breath of fresh air, and I'm more excited about the game than ever before. But here's where you come in. I want to hear your thoughts, your opinions, your perspectives on this next generation of Xbox that is being reported. Would you like to play World of Warcraft on it? Are you going to stick with your regular PC? Would you like to see WoW come to other things like, say, the Switch 2 or the PS5? What's your thoughts about a console port for WoW overall? I'd love to hear your thoughts, hear your opinions, and hear your perspectives. And while you're down there, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. And speaking of WoW going through a bunch of changes right now, LVY's development is on pause, people, because of the changes to the API, because of the changes to how Blizzard are treating add-ons going into midnight. And if you want to find out what's going on and hear my thoughts on it, you should check out this video right here. Stay safe, everybody. Have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again!